After using a ton of different monitors over the last year, I finally settled on the Dell U3219Q as my favorite one. It's 32 inches wide with a 4K resolution, has USB-C allowing me to attach my laptop with just one cable, and is just a super high quality monitor. It's also a productivity powerhouse, so if you're a student, developer, coder, or creative, make sure you stick around and see it in action. Now, some of you might have seen my review of the 27-inch Dell U3219Q, and if you liked that monitor, this one is essentially the big brother of that. And you know what they say, bigger is always better, and in the case of this particular monitor, I definitely do have to agree. By the way guys, before we get into the rest of the video, quick disclaimer, I purchased this monitor with my own money, so this review, as is every other review on this channel, is completely unbiased. Okay, so let's start with the design. Overall, the design is quite minimal and modern, which I like because the monitor can blend in with almost any setup or style. One thing you've probably noticed is that the bezels are tiny, even on a big 32-inch panel. And even the back of the monitor looks good, a nice neutral gray color scheme with a simple Dell logo. And while we're back here, yes, you can mount this monitor to an arm using a Visa mount. This is how I have it set up on my productivity-oriented desk at work. Now, bear in mind, if you are going to use a monitor arm, make sure it can actually support the weight of a 32-inch monitor. I'll link the one I'm using down in the description below. One thing I really don't like about the design though is the control buttons to navigate the menu. Dell did this so well on a different monitor, the ultra-wide P3421W, with a control joystick, making changing settings and switching between inputs super easy. By the way, I have a review on that monitor too, so I'll link that in the top right-hand corner if you're interested. I just don't understand how Dell can go from that to this, a couple of flimsy little buttons in a really awkward location, especially considering this is a more expensive monitor. But this isn't a big deal for most people because usually you're not poking around in the menus very often, but it is disappointing nonetheless. Now, if you're using the monitor with its included stand, it's quite solid and heavy, resulting in a pretty stable monitor if you're not mounting via a monitor arm. Also, this is the swivel range you get. As you can see, the range is pretty big, so you'll have no issues positioning it however you want. Moving on to connectivity, this is one of the Dell U3219Q's best attributes. It fully supports USB-C connectivity and has 90 watts of power delivery. So if you're using a laptop, all you need to do is plug a single USB-C cable into the laptop, connecting it to the monitor, and you'll get an external display, charging, and access to any USB devices you have plugged into your monitor. And yes, you do get these cables in the box. This is great for wired devices such as a mouse or keyboard that you want to have attached 24/7 to your monitor and not have to constantly plug and unplug those devices from your laptop. Although I wouldn't recommend connecting things such as a fast hard drive or SSD, because you'll always get better speeds by connecting that directly to your Mac or PC. Here's a quick picture of the connectivity options you get. As you can see, you also get the option of HDMI or DisplayPort and a couple of USB ports to connect accessories. Sometimes I like to use a wired mouse with my laptop if I'm having Bluetooth issues, or even a wired mechanical keyboard if I'm gaming using a Windows laptop. And I have to say, it's really refreshing to have all of these accessories plugged into the monitor itself, because if you're like me and you use a laptop with an external display, you only have to unplug the USB-C cable every time you want to take your laptop away, and you don't have to mess around with all these other dongles or cables as well. Moving on to the screen, the panel is 31.5 inches wide with a 16:9 aspect ratio. The resolution is 4K, which is great for productivity because you can scale the operating system and individual app windows to be super small, allowing you to fit more onto a single screen. The response time is 8 milliseconds, which is surprisingly good for a productivity-oriented monitor, and you can reduce it further to 5 milliseconds by going into the settings. Now, gaming is not something I would actually recommend on a 4K 60Hz monitor such as this one, but it is still possible, especially if you mainly play single-player games like Tomb Raider, for example. Twitch shooters like CSGO or Apex Legends is another story. You'll get some screen tearing and ghosting, so I really wouldn't recommend it. Not to mention, you'll be locked at a 60Hz refresh rate, so if FPS gaming is something you do a lot, I'd go for a more gaming-oriented monitor with higher refresh rates. Moving on, the panel type is IPS, which is pretty standard nowadays and gives you great viewing angles. There is an anti-glare coating, which some of you won't like because you lose the color quality and depth that you get on a glossy screen. Although my office has massive windows that lets in a lot of natural light during the day, so I personally like the anti-glare coating. Now, this monitor supports 99% sRGB color gamut, which in layman's terms means you'll see very accurate colors. If you're looking for more professional grade colors, the monitor supports 95% of DCI-P3, so not great, but not bad either. And I think everyone but serious video or photo professionals would be fine with that. So let's talk about actually using the screen. So my personal experience has been very positive. Whether I'm using Windows or Mac OS, including either a Mac Mini or a MacBook, the colors are super bright, very accurate, and the ability to see everything at 4K resolution means you can barely see any individual pixels. I've also had no issues with any blurriness or hard to read font that some people have reported with specifically MacBooks and some external monitors. Now, opting for a 32-inch 4K monitor for me has been a great upgrade over ultrawide and dual monitors, which I could never quite come to enjoy. I just like having everything on one large screen right in front of me, with no bezels, for example, on a dual monitor setup, or having to turn my head to look at the corners of an ultrawide, for example. I found that having my laptop on a stand off to the side, and I would do emails or watch a YouTube video on there, while I did all of my main work on just a single large screen in front of me, was a more enjoyable experience. But again, guys, this is my own personal opinion, so yours may vary. Okay, so let's talk about the price. By the way, I'll link this monitor down below, and I will update it regularly with the best prices I could find. Coming in at $1,000 US, depending where you live and what kind of deals you can find. It ain't cheap, especially compared to some cheaper options out there from companies like BenQ or LG, for example. But the build quality of this Dell monitor is extremely high. It's quite color accurate. The panel itself is very bright and vivid. And with features like USB-C hubs and chargers built in, it's a pretty solid device, especially if you're like me and spend up to 10 hours a day in front of a monitor. For me personally, this monitor is gonna be in front of my face for the next 5 years at least, so I didn't mind paying a little bit of an extra premium for a solid device. And quick side note as well, guys, if you are debating between the 27-inch version and the 32-inch version, I definitely think the 32-inch version is worth that extra markup because you really do get a lot more screen real estate. It's kind of hard to put it into perspective on a video. You kind of have to see it in real life to really understand the difference, but it is a massive, noticeable difference. Anyway, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. It's definitely been a great monitor for me. Hopefully if you pick one up, you'll enjoy it as much as I have. But apart from that, I will catch you in the next one.